Hey mate, have you ever been in a conversation with a beautiful girl and you feel like it's just not going anywhere? Well, I can tell you why. It's because you don't have attraction. What it is most average guys, they'll get into a conversation and they go into this chit-chat comfort mode, right? They'll ask, what do you do, where are you from? And it's just completely not interesting. So instead, what you want to do is spark some attraction. And this is what I talk about in this debrief with my client. So enjoy. We set the goal for today, and that was to have a more playful conversation, right? Obviously, I know you had a bit of a late night, so it's harder to be like more playful when you're tired. But that was a goal today, and the way we wanted to be playful is by making the statements, right? Playful statements. And what we talked about throughout today was, instead of going down the route of asking questions, which is quite easy, I know that, it's much easier to just say, oh, what are you up to today? Because you don't have to think about it, right? Whereas to come up with a creative statement, you have to be a bit more present, right? Because you have to be there in the moment and look at her and then make a statement based on how she looks, right? So what I think would be good is if we make, like, keep slapping me, if we make if we make kind of let's say a routine that you can do all the time, which would make it easier, right? Because now your default kind of conversational starter is, what are you doing right now, right? Instead, if we say, what I noticed about you is you look very creative, so we could just copy and paste this into all the different interactions. In the beginning, it's easier, isn't it? Because I remember back in the day when I was learning, I couldn't come up with something new for every girl because I was too in my head, I was a bit nervous, and I couldn't really say, oh, what I noticed about you, and look at her and then be like, oh, you look like you're an architect, or you look like you're a yoga teacher, or, now it's easier. So what I'm saying is, if we have something that we can say before we go in, so if she looks quite like creative, you could say, you look creative, you must be a fashion designer. If she looks a bit more like smarter, you could go with, I had to say you look like very, I don't know, you look very smart. I'm guessing you work in like tech, I don't know, like whatever something like that. Something that you can start the conversation off with. And then off of that, that's when the good stuff happens, the improv, right? So she goes, oh, I'm a yoga teacher. And then you go, oh, well, is that where you got the good physique from all the yoga lessons, right? And then you just say something about the topic. That's what we talked about. So when we think back to the Armenian girl, the one from, was she Philippines? So those girls, you didn't really talk about the topic in hand, right? And what we said is, imagine there's a hat, imaginary hat right in the middle. And when the girl says something, it goes into the hat, right? And you open the hat and you read it. It says, oh, like Philippines, right? And you're only allowed to talk about that, right? It doesn't matter how much you know about the country or how much you don't know about the country, but just try to talk about it. So I personally don't know much about like Armenia, right? It's quite windy here, isn't it? I don't know much about Armenia, but I could say, oh, I've never been to Armenia, but I know you guys have like amazing food there, right? Which I don't, but I'm just saying that. It's just a statement, isn't it? It's just that you don't have to be right. That's the whole point of this playful conversation. You don't have to be 100% accurate. You know what I mean? So a girl might look more smart, but you say, oh, you look quite creative. It doesn't matter, right? Because you're just making an assumption, and then she will say, oh no, actually I do this, and then off of that you will have a conversation, right? Which we'll practice we'll talk about more in the future. This conversation will be what we call attraction, right? Where you do teasing, where you do challenging. For now, I prefer if you just talk about the topic, but in future sessions, if you say stuff like, "Oh my God, you're from Armenia," that's it, it's over, bye. No, I'm just joking, So we amp it up a bit, and you can build more attraction, more, and we can make it more emotional. As I said, this man-to-woman interaction, like building a relationship with a woman, is an emotional experience, right? It's not. If you like do some research based on how attraction works, it doesn't happen in the logical part of the brain, right? It happens in the emotional part of the brain. And this is the reason stuff like, "Oh, what'd you do for work?" or like, "What'd you do today?" doesn't work, because you're not affecting that part of the brain, right? You're affecting the logical part of the brain. And for men, it's the same as well. When we see a hot, attractive girl, we're not like logically thinking, "Oh my God, it's a good arse," like, "Look at that, that's like 5 centimeters out of her." We're not thinking like that. We're like, "Oh, I just feel good," when I see the arse. It's just like, it's the emotion, isn't it? And that's what I'm trying to say. So when you're in a conversation, you're trying to have certain behaviors that affect that emotional part of the brain, that gets her attracted. And in future sessions, we'll talk about different strategies to have that emotional impact, And that's why, by the way, non-verbals is so important. They say communications is like 90% non-verbal, isn't it? Because of that, right? Because it's more emotionally impactful, right? The words is just, it's like logical, isn't it? Whereas like a good eye contact, right? When you have a really good interaction and you're just looking into her eyes like very sexually, and it just feels really good. You know what I mean? When you just got amazing eye contact, that's what that emotional impact is, right? It's the non-verbal, it's the smile, the voice projection. So that's that part. Yeah, in terms of, we said when you do an indirect opener, like, you once said, "Where's the best juice around here?" So you could easily transition into a personal conversation with the girl. So you could say, "Oh, by the way, from your accent," because they had an accent. So, "By the way, your accent sounds like you're from like Poland or somewhere," something like that, So it's kind of it's kind of way of like you're going in to get like not direction, but just an opinion of like, "Oh, where's a good like hipster coffee shop around here?" And then suddenly something kind of grabs your attention from that person. You know what I mean? So I'll tell you an example. Actually, I was in Piccadilly, and this guy was taking pictures right next to me. He was doing like this with the iPhone. This what do you call that when it's like slow motion and then it adds up?
Stop frame. Timelapse.
Timelapse. Yeah, he was doing a time-lapse, and I was just intrigued. I was like, "Oh, what is that? Like, what are you?" He's like, "Oh, it's a time-lapse." And then I go, "Oh, by the way, are you like from Middle East?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm from Kuwait." And suddenly we go into like this. We had this 10-minute conversation. Obviously, I wasn't trying to attract him, but I was actually intrigued, of where he was from, and then we got into the conversation. So that's what you're kind of you're doing with the girl, right? You're going in kind of like, "Oh, like where's the best juice place?" Because she's got a juice, and "Oh, she's got an ice cream." "Oh, where's the best place to go?" "Oh, it's actually we just went to the good one." Is it? "Oh, by the way, your accent is it from like Italy?" Yeah. And then off of there you have a conversation. It's very natural. So it's this way. Yeah, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the front stop, right? So we practiced a couple of times how to do the front stop. By the front stop, what I mean is, so you're walking and you see the girl coming towards you, right? You don't wait for her to pass in and run around and approach her. You just approach straight on. The straight on. Actually, we could call it the straight on approach. Yeah, that makes sense, isn't it? The straight on approach. So with the straight on approach, we talked about you need to open earlier and with a louder voice projection, because you're going to be opening a bit more far out, right? Whereas the one you go around, the one you do the run around, that one, because you're coming in closer, you don't need to have as much voice projection, right? And what you do is you get into a path, right? Because sometimes I've seen you, and let's say the girl's coming, and you open like kind of from the side, whereas you want to get right in front of her, right? More impact. You want to have more impact in the approach, because as we talked about, that first bit is all about impact, you know, stopping her from whatever she's doing and concentrating on you, right? And you need a lot of impact in terms of your non-verbals to do that.